Phase two of our short ceremony, and Coffey, I'm saying that for you, short ceremony. We have the enshrined inductees who have already been automatically, by virtue of their banners and their Hockey Hall of Fame honors, are officially in the Edmonton Oilers Hockey Hall of Fame. More than 10,000 games played, 3,257 goals, 6,227 assists, more than 9,400 points, 7,700 penalty minutes, 41 Stanley Cups, 9 Hockey Hall of Fame inductions, a Jack Adams and a Foster Hewitt Memorial Award. Those are the people that are automatically in the Edmonton Oilers Hall of Fame. Sending their regrets today are Wayne Gretzky, Grant Fuhr, Mark Messier, Glenn Anderson, Glenn Sather, and Rod Phillips. But I'm proud to introduce the enshrined Hall of Fame members, Al Hamilton, Jari Kurri, Paul Coffey, and Kevin Lowe. Gentlemen. Since Paul gave me heck for asking questions, I won't ask one. Anybody have a question for these guys?
Well, that's good. We can go.
No.
Hey guys, right here. Kind of the same questions I asked to Lee and Ryan, just about the impact of Dave Semenko with Dave's drives this week. Maybe each one of you could kind of say something about Dave's legacy and how important that those festivities are to this week. Maybe beginning with Kevin, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting that well, first of all, it's so fitting that Dave's legacy, his name's going to continue on. I mentioned last night on the telecast that he was anything but a tough guy or a mean guy. Although the perception from people is that he was probably that, given his role in hockey, and he was the kindest, calmest, least aggressive person you'd ever meet, off the ice, on the ice. And the cool thing about what Dave did was, again, if you look at his penalty minutes, he didn't have very many penalty minutes relative to the tough guys in their era. First of all, he never had to because nobody wanted to fight him, but it was never his goal. His goal was to be a policeman and to allow the team, the skilled guys like Jari and Coffey and Gretz to be able to do their thing, and did it so well. So, and then at the very end, his last year before he passed, he had taken on a role as ambassador with the Oilers, and he really, Dave was a shy guy. When you got a beer or two in him, he was super funny, very witty, but he really embraced that ambassador role that he in that last year, and he could see how the fans loved him. So I mean, I think Oiler fans, as much as us, his former teammates, are really pleased to see his name and what Sports Central does so much for the community. Dave is always so, whenever there's little kids around, he's always so happy to take them by the hand, and it always looks so funny. He's 6'4", and these little kids. It really fitting that this legacy carries on.
Al, you played with him in 2 leagues.
I was there when Dave came from the Brandon Wheat Kings. We were lacking a little muscle, and I watched him skate, and I'm going, what the hell is this? And then I watched him in action, and I had a big smile on my face because I instantly got braver. Dave was a great guy. He was lots of fun to be with. He was a great teammate. He was an imp, and always had, as Lee had mentioned, always had something up his sleeve for somebody, and so the guys all loved him. We kind of was with him in the last few days of his life, and even at that time, he still maintained that great sense of humor, and I remember seeing him the night before he passed. walked into his hospital room and he looked at me and he said, "I'm going to take the marijuana treatment, Hammy." He says, "We're going to see if Cheech was right." So he was a beautiful man. We miss him, and he was a great contribution, made great contributions to the Oilers. So I was honored to have him as a friend.
Jari?
Well, I think the teams need to have a guy like him around, keep the guys loose and with his jokes, and of course, he make my life easier. He's been around, you know, and just a great human being. You know, in my first year, he was always very nice to me. Of course, coming from Europe, was very important. Your teammates are supporting you, and he was one of the great guys with being around.
Coff?
Yeah, pretty much all of the above. I mean, you look here, Dave was as proud an Oiler as there was, loved to be an Oiler right to the end, and still talked about it. And, you know, Fogey mentioned it. He allowed us to go on the ice and do what we did best and made sure going into Philadelphia and Boston and rinks like that everything was safe. And, you know, his humor was legendary. And, you know, for myself personally and everybody in here, there's not a day that doesn't go by where we don't think about him, and I'm telling you, every time snicker and laugh.
Tommy?
My question is for Paul, because you've seen this organization from a bunch of different angles, and like a lot of great Oilers, like Ryan coming back to the organization, you know, you've come back to the organization as well. The way that this Oilers Hall of Fame, what are your thoughts on how it connects every decade of Oilers hockey and not just, you know, memorializes the 80 Oilers?
Well, I mean, I think I can speak for everybody up here. We wanted to be like the Montreal Canadiens. We just did. I remember Kevin talking about it earlier and going into the Montreal Forum and seeing those 24 Stanley Cup banners. I mean, we got a little ways to go, but the Oilers do have 5 of them and more. I don't think, when I say we, I mean the Oilers wanted to do anything less than being the classiest organization they could be, whether it be the first inaugural outdoor game in 2004 or inducting Hall of Famers. We didn't just want to honor guys. Again, when I say we, I mean the Oilers. We wanted guys that were deserving. I mean, you know, you walk in some of the rinks right now, they got a bunch of jerseys hanging up there, and they're just honored. I don't quite know for what, but here at Edmonton, the standards are high. They just are. And, you know, Kevin spent his whole life here since coming here at 19 years old from Quebec, and loves Edmonton and put his heart and soul into this organization. Myself, look at Jari, he comes over from Finland. Wayne, Mark, all of us live and breathe the Oilers. And, you know, you look at Ryan and Lee, you know, what they've done and what they've meant to this organization. And, you know, I can't think of 2 more fitting guys to be the first 2 guys to be put into this Hall of Fame. But that's what Edmonton's all about. There's no second bester. It's all in or nothing at all.
Kevin, what did you learn from Lee Fogolin, and how did he impart that wisdom to you guys?
Well, Lee said earlier that he was fortunate. I was really fortunate. We had the same agent at the time, a guy by the name of Alan Eagleson, and you know, certainly Al had some challenges in his professional life, but he was a good agent for us, and he had connected right away. Obviously, Lee knew that who I was coming in, and then we happened to be paired together, and you know, I mean, he took me under his wing, no question. You know, we were young guys having a bunch of fun because we're having success on the ice, but you know, I remember time to time he'd pull me aside and say, "Hey, listen, it's great to have fun, but got to remember you got a job to do." And just those you know, when you get it from a guy like Lee Fogolin, it's like, okay, got it. Clearly, we're not looking our best here. And then on the ice, the things I learned from him, I learned to stay on my side, because I went over to his side. He'd tell me to get the hell out of there and get back over on my side, and just really to play the game in straight lines, and you know, more importantly, to have him on riding shotgun, as Al said, Semenko provided for him and his teammates. I mean, I had a lot of I felt really big and strong when I was out there because I had Fogie beside me, you know, and there wasn't an instant in the ice where there was a scrum where if I was involved, that he wouldn't be in over top of me, you know, doing stuff. So, you know, I think we played 7 years together. So strange in this day and age, you know, to have the exact same partner for 7 years. They tried Coffey and I once, and it was disaster. Like we're -3 in one period, and we never did get back together. But you know, and you can tell from Lee that he's a very, you know, he's a humble guy, and you've heard us tell the stories. He deserves, and likewise, Hammy. The best thing about the 79-80 Oilers, you know, it was the beginning of the foundation. But we had unbelievable leaders, a whole whack of them. You know, not just a couple of them, a whole whack. They're all great guys. Blair McDonald, Ron Chipperfield, Hammy, Fogie, Colin Campbell was here. Like, we were blessed as young players to come into the National Hockey League and have that kind of leadership. So, and then of course Lee stayed on a little bit longer, quite a bit longer, and did what he did, handing the captaincy over to Wayne. So, yeah, can't say much else other than we're still on the right side of the grass, Fogie. We got a few more years, but what a run we had.
Paul, can you talk, Paul, about maybe your initial introduction to Lee and what he did to leave a lasting impression? You've talked very openly about how much he meant to you earlier. What was it about Lee, just as his personality, and if you have a favorite memory or tidbit that he shared with you that really impacted you?
I didn't get the opportunity to play with Lee that often on the ice, but I got the opportunity to sit beside him for 6 years. And you know, I'm sitting here tonight and so proud of him up here and looking at the size of his hands and just how softly he speaks. And that's not how Lee played. He played the game all in, all out, all the time, and just was a pleasure to sit beside. I know people in this room probably find it hard to believe, but I was a pretty good whipping boy at Glen Sather back in the day. So he'd come in the room and tear a strip off all of us, but usually started with me because where I sat. And Fogie would always give me a calming influence. Just play your game. Don't worry about him. Just play your game. And, you know, I remember earlier in my career, Lyle Kolchiski, our trainer, used to wheel in the shopping cart, you know, for either the red hot towels or your practice jerseys. So I was taking my jersey off one day, had it in a ball, and tossed it, and of course missed the cart, and the sweater was on the floor. Lee stood up, didn't miss a beat, stood up, grabbed the sweater, put it right side in, folded it nicely on the shopping cart, walked back, and gave me a stare that I've never had before, which taught me quietly the respect you have for your jersey and the respect you have for the organization. And you know, you look at the stuff, I was going to ask a question earlier, but, you know, Lee came, highly touted player, came from Buffalo, played with the French Connection, Perot and company, and went to a Stanley Cup once. And as a young kid, he lost. And I remember him saying to me, it wasn't a big deal. We're going to be back next year with the Sabres. Well, that never happened. And he instilled in us the purpose of seizing the moment. In other words, when we got to the Stanley Cup, do not take this thing for granted. Win today, and you know, his leadership was great. But more importantly, family man, friendship. Lee's had some things in his life that no father wants to go through, but as only Lee and Carol can take it head on, and he's doing great, and we are all so proud of him.
Anyone else? Jack.
Jack, before you do it, I got to tell Paul Lee's story. So Fogie had bad shoulders, and so he didn't like to jump on the ice the traditional way with, you know, hand on the top of the boards, feet on the bench, and do the hockey player jump on the ice. He, I would say 99% of the time, would go out the door, so he'd always sit by the door. And, you know, everybody knows we had a loose dressing room. We had lots of fun. And, you know, Coff was one of the leaders in that. And so, you know, the score would be, you know, 5-1 or whatever. Fogie would play from puck drop to the final buzzer, like, you know, like locked into playing the game. And of course, guys like Coff would start getting bored when the score was 5 or 6-1. So, you know, it'd be 4 or 5 minutes left in the game, time for Fogie to go out. and he'd open the door, and Coff would grab the back of his pants and wouldn't let him to get on the ice. And Lee, at first, he would be like this, trying to and he wouldn't know what was going on, and then he'd turn around and he'd go, Coff, Coff, and he'd be hitting Coff's hand. The play's going down on the ice. I'll never forget that. The look at I would be supposed to be going on too, and I'd be watching it go, that's the funniest thing I've ever seen.
Jack.
Kevin, I think you've offered us a glimpse, but I guess, most of the people in this room, and obviously having been here for a period of time, I've heard the importance of Lee Fogolin. I think Smitty has the luxury of having played recently, so a lot of kids remember his career and what kind of player he was. I'm just curious if anyone would like to weigh in for a 20-year-old kid who's scrolling on social media today and sees this induction. What would you want them to know about Lee Fogolin and what he meant to the group? Because he's a guy who obviously would be under the radar in a normal circumstance, but it's obvious how important he is. What would you want that kid to know about Lee Fogolin who might be introduced to him for the first time today?
You guys can comment on Lee. I'm going to comment on Smitty because I've talked to and I've followed Ryan's career, obviously, and the great introduction that he got. But I remember, and you talk about being drawn back to this organization, and you see the guys. I mean, Ryan came in 94. I was still trying to hang on for dear life for another 6 years of my career. But seeing what he brought to the team and the leadership and the pride, and a kid from Banff, which I guess maybe was a Calgary Flame fan, maybe not, maybe always an Oiler fan, which is great. But for me personally, being an older guy in this room, to watch what Ryan brought to this organization, and talking to Stevie Staios last night and Billy Guerin and a lot of his former guys, and it was just for kids to see what he brought to the team and the way glowingly we speak of him. That's what they should see on global, or not global, what's it called? Instagram or whatever they call it. I don't even know what it is, but just the pride in how these guys carried themselves. Some you guys can comment on Fogie, but
Jari, your thoughts about what Jack asked about Lee? What would you want people to know today?
Well, I was watching the game last night on TV. I came a little bit late, but the way Lee and Kevin and some of the guys, with the way they're blocking the shots, on those days in hockey, I can't believe how they're still here and standing with all the bruises. But he always came to play. Foggy was always there, playing hard on the ice in the key times, and very, very important players, And, the team needs different type of players, and Foggy took care of that part defensively.
Thoughts, Al?
Well, first of all, I would say that the greatest thing about Lee Fogolin is he's a good human being. And he was a leader in fitness long before that became in vogue with strength conditioning. Way back with Punch Imlock in Buffalo, he brought out a wrestler one time to train us in training camp, and we're going, what the heck is this? But he had some ideas there that when Lee came to the Oilers, he had this wheel that tightened up your abdomen, and he was doing these things, and none of the rest of us could do any of that. So he was one of the toughest, steadiest defensemen I've ever watched and had the pleasure to play with and be a friend with.
Bob?
I had abs the year Jari scored 70 goals. And speaking of 70 goals, Jari, you mentioned you watched the game. You're one of 8 players in NHL history to do that. Scoring has gone back up. Do you think it's out of the realm of possibility? Total curveball here for you, but you're an executive over in Europe. Do you think there's a possibility we may see another 70 goal scorer in the National Hockey League in a season?
Well, I think we all hope so, because I think the fans who come to watch the game, they want to see the scores. Watching last night's game, the Oilers, the way they play with the tempo, with the speed, and the chances they have, and certainly there will be a player who will score 70 goals, and who's going to be, I'm not sure. I'm not followed that hard NHL because of time chasing and living in Finland, but I do hope so.
Anybody else? So what we do now, we're going to some photo ops. We'll get Ryan and Lee back up with these four gentlemen, and then we'll bring up some Jason Semenko and Sheldon from Sports Central to take some pictures, and then we'll do some one-on-ones. Lee's going to be on that side. Ryan's going to be over here. Yep, no problem. I'll take that out.
Thanks, guys.
We're gonna do the six first, sure, and then we'll get.
Where do you want us, Kev? Move up or? Come up here?
Yeah, right to the front. You guys, Lee and Ryan should be in the middle. Right in the middle, Lee. Yeah, just let's do Sheldon and Jason. Come on up, guys.
The ends or what?
No, be in the middle. One between Ryan and Coff, and one between Al and Lee. Right there. There you go.